So that simply means that we're going to start from variables, and I'm going to I will take a step deeper into variables today. And right here, if you are seeing my screen, I'm going to make a new file, and I will call it variable.js. Yeah, so we have a separate file for variables. So anybody who needs the source code after today's class will be able to provide the source code. And the next thing, I'm going to open a Quokka extension on this file so that I'll be able to run our code. So we already know what a variable is, all right? That a variable is a container, all right? And it's a container where things can be stored or values can be stored. And values that are stored in a variable becomes dynamic, meaning that in JavaScript, when you store a type of variable or a type of data in a variable, you can change that type over time. So that variable in JavaScript is a dynamic container. And then we also looked at different keywords used in declaring variable, starting from the var keyword. Sorry, let me use comments here. Starting from the var keyword, the let keyword, and the const keyword. Okay, so var keyword was introduced in EX5, that is ECMAScript 5, and this var keyword is what we call function scoped, all right? It is function scoped, while let and const are, we're going to look at all this, and then later on we'll just take a deeper dive into scope or scoping, and also we'll look at hoisting in JavaScript. All right. Then the keywords which are let and const that I said they are block scoped was introduced in EX6. And when something is block scoped in JavaScript, it means that it can only be accessible within a block of code. All right? And they cannot be declared, and but let can be reinitialized, but both of them cannot be redeclared. All right, so let us quickly demonstrate a little bit of these things that I'm saying as just a refresher. So if we want to declare a variable, and we call it var, and then I pass name to it, and then what I'm going to do here is I'll just put it, I'll just put in my name. Okay, so this variable now, the keyword, let me zoom it in a little bit. So the data type stored in here is a string data type. If I log in this, if I check the value of this name, we see that what is inside this variable is mark. And why you are seeing quotes is because it is of data type string. Now, to tell us that variable in JavaScript is dynamic, I can use this var again, or let me just call this name again, and then at this point I'm going to initialize it with a number, And then when I call the name, see what happens. Instead of the value stored inside it to be of data type string, it is now changed to number data type or integer data type. That is the dynamism of variable in JavaScript. Other programming languages like Java, C++, C Sharp, where you have to you have to state, if it is a string, you have to state the type of data you want to store. So before you declare a variable, you state the data type before you declare the variable. In that way, it is no more dynamic, because if it is of data type string, you cannot change the value and put in a number or boolean or any other data type. Now, I hope that is well understood. So let us now look at the scope or the function scope of this var keyword. We're going to declare a function right now. So we declare a function, we call it let us call it anything, a random name. We'll call it a place, and then don't like all this. Why you just stay one place, my friend? All right. So we call it the function name. We call it place. Okay, and inside this place, I'll use var and declare. Don't mind whatever I'm typing here. I'm just trying to come up with something, so it doesn't really matter. And right now, I'm going to call this Lagos. Now, this function that I've created here with a variable, if I come outside here and I want to log out this location, see what happens. It says location is not defined. But if I come inside this inside the, what is it called? If I come inside the function and then I log out, if I log this location out, you see that it is giving me what I want to see, which is Lagos. So that is what we mean by being function scoped. And then if I move this log before the declaration, let me just move this up here. If I move it outside the scope before I declare the function, you see that it is still returning the same error. All right. So like this now, we are saying that yes, our variable that is inside this function is function scoped variable, because it won't be accessed outside the variable. I mean outside the function. The variable cannot be accessed outside the function. On the other hand, let us try something else here. Let's say I want to use an if statement. I'll put in if true, I'll just say log out. No, I want to use the same var. If true, location should be Abuja. All right. And at this point, I'm going to comment this out. Guys, it's like the screen is too wide. It's just running up and down. It's not allowing me to concentrate. So I'll comment this out, and then I'll log out this. See what happens here. This variable is declared within a block, within this if block. But you can see that I can access it outside the block. Meanwhile, we tried doing the same thing up here, where we declare the variable with var keyword inside a function block, but it refused to be accessed outside the function. So you can now see clearly what we mean by var keyword being function scoped. That's just what I'm trying to explain here. All right, it is function scoped, but it is not block scoped. But then sorry, let's change this var to let's. Let's change it to let. You see that if I change it to let or to const, it is no longer accessible outside this block. Why? Because let is block scoped while var is function scoped. Let's take note of that. Very, very, very important. So if I comment out this one, let me comment this out. I will uncomment this one, and I'll change this particular var to let's. See, I'm going to disable all this rubbish that is disturbing me. Oh, you see all this nonsense? I'll just remove all of you. So I've just changed the let's to, I've changed the var to let's, and then if you see down here, it is not still accessible. Why is that so? Okay, but if I do something like this, there are different ways that we can declare a function. Let me say that I change this to maybe let's. Is this correct? On this, it's I want to emulate arrow function. Later on, I'll show us that. No problem. So the only reason why this is not accessible is because let is not function scoped, rather it is block scoped, while var is not block scoped, it is function scoped. I think I've shown us an illustration of both of them here, if we understood what I mean by that. So as we proceed, if you have any question, you just put it in the chat section so that when I go through the chat, I'll be able to see it, and then we'll attend to the questions as fast as possible. So these are the new things that I want to show us this evening about variables, how to declare variables using different keywords, and also the scope of these variables. We'll talk more of that when we get to scope in our roadmap, because we have scope and hoisting as a subject on its own. So let's be patient with that. But with this, we have a little idea of what it means. Now, let me close this one and then create a new file, and I'll call this datatype.js. Datatype.js, and we open our cooker. This time around, we're now going to look at different data types. And like I said before, so many different data types. So you can quickly search on Google and you see a lot of them. But then there is also an aspect that I want to show us about data type before we go to the next one. So we have data types of string, we have number, we have boolean, we have null, we have undefined, we have objects, we have function. Function is a data type also. We have symbol, we have big ints. Okay, let me include that. And the last one, we have an array. All these are different data types. We have date and so many other ones. Now, amongst all these data types, we can group them into two. Namely, we have the primitive and non-primitive. All right? Let's now take our time to explain. The primitive types are this. Why the non-primitive are this? If you look at the string, number, boolean, null, undefined, symbol, big int, these are primitive data types. While the non-primitive are the object, the function, the array. Now, why do we even classify them this way? What do we mean by primitive types and non-primitive types? Primitive types simply means those types of data that cannot be mutated. And in other words, it means those data types that cannot be changed, cannot be altered. For example, if I have a variable, if I have a variable, just try to mix things up here, of data type string, I cannot change or mutate this variable. What do I mean? Let's say I want to change this small letter d, or I want to change this d to j. All right? That is a way I can mutate this variable by maybe changing the dog to mean a jog, something like this. Okay? So if I try to mutate this variable, let's assume I try to do something like now, or to reassign it by mutating it, and I put something like jog, what happens is it will recreate a different variable entirely. It will recreate a different variable entirely. It cannot alter what has been stored inside this. The same thing is applicable to numbers. The same thing is applicable to boolean, which is yes or no, null, undefined, symbol, big int, and all of that. So whenever you create a variable and you pass a value of data type string, you should already know that, okay, anytime you want to mutate that variable, you should be ready to create a new variable entirely, because you cannot change it. All right. So let us now look at. Let me quickly introduce something. If I put these dots, you will see that we have other string methods like splits, slice, replace, repeat, and so on and so forth. You have to local lowercase, to lowercase, to string, to uppercase, to trim, and all of that. These are different string methods that will help you to carry out different operation on this string that is stored here. But none of them would allow you to mutate the variable or that particular string. Let's take, for example, now here I have 2025 dash today's date is what? I don't even know again. 4-4. Let's leave it like that. And I call this variable again, and I pass in a method splits, and split function, it takes in the symbol. I'll not put in this dash because that is the symbol for, I'll pass in this dash, and then I'll come over here. At this point, what happens is I have turned this into an array, a kind of, and I'll come here now and I use our index, which we normally use to access an array, and then when I come down here and I call this now, sorry, I want to log this out. Console.log, open this up, and then close this. So see what's happened here. So using this split method, I converted our string into an array that is bringing out, it has broken it into different parts, 3 parts, that is bringing out the items of that string that is converted into array in pieces. But none of them at this point allows me to to mutate the string. So if I can change the value of this, it is simply because it is no longer a string. What you are seeing here is no longer a string. Rather, it has become an array. So I can decide to change this 2025 to 2026 using from here. I can change this 2025 to 2026. All right. But that will be possible because the data type has already changed by virtue of this method that I used here. Okay, I think this is enough on primitive data type. Remember that I said they are types of data that you cannot mutate, you cannot just change anyhow. What about the non-primitive? Non-primitive data types are those data types that you can remove part of the value, you can add to the value, you can change the value. For example, we create a name array, and then we pass this into this very quickly so that we don't waste time. So if at this point now, we already know that if we want to access this array, you need to call the array and then use the index number. I keep on forgetting to log this out. So if I want to log out this young man, okay, so through this index number, I will be able to change this, what is it called? I'll be able to retrieve the value of this array. Okay, but then I have the possibility, it is possible for me to remove this dog entirely. It is possible for me to add another thing to it entirely. So let's take, for example, I do something like array.push. Okay, if I use this push, and then I'll pass in a new value inside. We have dog, cat, rat, bat. Okay, let me now put cow, like I like cow. Okay, so at this point, if I log out our array, let's see what is going to happen. I don't want to pop anything, I just want to see the array. So you can see here that it is the same array, but originally what I stored in it is we have 4 values, but I have been able to add cow inside this same value. This is example of a non-primitive data type. Okay. Now, if I want to remove any, I'll just plug in another method. Once I put my dot, you see different method. So if I use this pop, I use pop, what are we going to pop? We pass in a string. So let's look for dog. Let us pop out dog. And then I log again, and I log the name array. What is going on? I do not even, okay, see what happened. The pop that I use here, hold on. I think I'm the one that made a mistake. So when I used pop, I kicked out the last one, and it has returned to the normal value that I have. Remember, in line 23 here, I added cow. It became how many? 5 items. While in line 24, in line 23, I popped out one. Line 22, I added, but it is the same variable that I'm doing all these things. The value I stored in my variable, that's where I'm doing all this popping and pushing and so many other things that I can do. So it is still possible that you see this dog that is here, I can change this letter D, small letter d to capital letter D. It is possible. Why? Because this is a type of data that gives me the opportunity to manipulate it to, okay, let me just use the correct terms. It gives me the opportunity to mutate. All right, it gives me the opportunity to alter them the way that I want. These are examples of non-primitive data types. So why I'm emphasizing on all this is because even when you start React, you should already know when a data is primitive, when it is not primitive, so that you should not make attempt of trying to alter or mutate data that are immutable. And in React, it is React components. In fact, best practice of React is immutability. A synonym, another name to React is immutability, because it does not like mutating values. I think I'm going to stop here as far as this is concerned. So with these few examples that I have given, you can then go ahead, experiment with different data types of your choice to see how you can manipulate different data types. So if I have any question here, let me see before we take any step further. Do I have any question? Let me check. Okay, my question is, what if you declare global scope? Can you access letter const outside block scope? Answer, please, from console.log now the splits. Why is there hyphen? Okay. Okay, these are the two questions right now. So the first question is coming from this one, global scope. I think Just allow me. This person asking question on global scope. Just be patient a little because let me check. Okay, let's quickly talk about this global scope of a thing. All right, if you are still seeing my screen, let's understand something here. When we talk about declaring functions and variable in a global scope, we need to understand what we mean by that. It simply means that we want to declare a function that is accessible by all the code base. For me, it is a very dangerous thing to do, except it's just for a simple application. So I'm going to open my, uh-oh, I'm going to open a browser and let me just run this. Oh, I don't have any file here, HTML file. So let me open the console right here. So in this console, if I type something like window dots, look at, you have a whole lot of things. And if I come down to, so if you look at all these are what is called Windows objects. And anytime you declare a variable, a function like this, if you declare this, let me just give it this name. So if I declare this as a function, and then if I declare this as a function, this is a global scoped function. Why? Because I can access this function from the Windows object. I don't want to create any HTML5, but let me just see how I can illustrate this. So let me do it again. I declare function. Oh, why is this stressing me? I call it name, and then in between here, I just put in 2 plus 2. Then, if I call this name, something is wrong somewhere here. Something is wrong somewhere. Okay, let me do what I want to do here. So I call this is a function that I want to call, and then inside here I'm going to return, let me just return this. So if I come down and I call this name, you see that it's already returning the value for me. Okay, the same way if I do window dot name. You see what is going on here. If I put window dot name, it is returning dog. Don't mind that it's saying window is not defined. It is returning dog, which means this is a window object. The function, when you define a function with this format, you are declaring a global function. And that global function can be accessed anywhere within your code base. And Windows objects are objects that are accessible or that can be used on a browser, which means let's assume that you have declared functions like this and you store some sensitive data into that function. Do you understand? Somebody can use the browser. Once that app is accessible on a browser, they can use this Windows objects to access whatever you have stored inside that variable. Okay? So, if by the question you ask, if you declare global scope, can you access let and const outside block scope? The answer is no. All right, const and let, they are made to behave within or to function within a block, and then you cannot declare a const and let variables and then you access them outside the block. The simple reason is because they are made to maintain our code. They are used to ensure that we don't have too much problems when we are coding. When you have a lot of code, it will reduce conflict of naming, and or they call it namespace, and it will reduce poor quality of your code. It allows you to create clean code, and it allows you to break down your code into block sections. Each block has what they are doing, and that will allow you to maintain your code very well. So take note of that. It is not by using the let or const keyword that matters at this point, but it's by knowing when to declare function in a global sense and when not to declare it in a global sense. So if you are declaring a function in this format, it should only be when you are working on a very small project. But in a real project that handles sensitive data, you don't try that to avoid issues. Now, the second question from console.log, now, why is there this? Where is that thing again? Why is there, okay, in this one, why do we have the hyphen? This hyphen here. So if I change the hyphen and I put forward slash, see what is happening here. So the reason why we have the hyphen is, let me just call it, the hyphen is the separator. Okay, so I'm only telling this JavaScript that, okay, look at this variable, the string, break this string into different parts using this hyphen as the separator. So from this, anywhere it sees that this hyphen is going to break the code, the string. So that is why this 2025 is separate, 4 is separate, and 4 here is also separate. That's why I have this here. So if I change this to slash like this, see what happened, it's no longer working. So my separator should be this for it to work. That is why it is here. So whatever is here is determined by what I have here. I think that answers the question of Benedict. So the first question that I attempted to answer, I hope the person that asked, Ahmed, I hope Ahmed is still here. I hope you understood what I tried to explain. But I was still, because I just,
Yes, I understand what you are trying to say.
okay, thank you. I just tried, I did a copy and paste. So with time, we'll take our time to discuss about scope in functions properly. That will give us a very safe landing. And also, what I explained about data types, primitive and non primitive, I hope we also understood that. Now, moving forward, we're going to quickly look at operators. Operators, these are very basic. Who is making noise? These are very basic concepts, JavaScripts. All right. But then, as basic as they may look, we still need to consider them. Let us not work by assumption. Operators. And what do I do? So I close this and I call this operators.js, close, and I run this young man here. Okay. Operators, we have the basic arithmetic operators, we call it ma. If you have to type mathematics, okay. Sorry guys, I don't know what I'm doing. Mathematical operators. We have the assignment operators. We have the comparison operators. We have the assignment operators. We have the comparison operators. We have logical operators, and we have the, no, 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 don't want to talk about this. So we have the ternary operator, and last but not the least, we have type of operator. So the mathematical operators, they are simple things that we already know, so we don't need to waste time on this. The plus, the minus, the asterisk, multiplication, the division, and the modulus. So we don't need to explain this one. When it comes to assignment operator, the assignment operator, I have taken a little time to explain that before. So we have this equal sign, but let me just accept it this way. We have the equal sign, we have this assignment operator, we have this is incremental assignment, decremental, and so on and so forth. So this one is square roots, or what? Yes. And then for this comparison operator, we have the comparison operator, double equal sign and triple equal sign. This is strict comparison. This is not strict. This is less than or greater than. I always have problem with these two things. I don't know why. And then these ones are less than and less than and equal to, greater than and equal to. Coming to the logical operator, we have the and, the or, and then we have one funny operator like that, which we are going to consider. Hmm? And that is this operator. The name sounds funny. I don't want to call it now. So under the ternary operator, this is what we have. We look at that. This one is very important because in React you must use it, whether you like it or you don't like it. And then type of is type of. So easy to check uh, data type of different What happened here? Why did they clean up?
Okay.
Okay, very quickly, now let us consider how these things are used. Mathematical operators, they are just to perform addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and to return remainder. So you can use it to find whole numbers, even numbers and odd numbers with this mathematical operator. So which I don't think I need to do that. We can just wrap our head around it. Now let's start with this assignment operator here. So it is used everywhere, everywhere. When you want to declare a variable, when you want to create a function, an arrow function, they are used everywhere. So in this function, let a equal 10. This is an assignment operator used to store or to pass a value onto a variable. That is what we call an assignment operator. And another thing now is, let's look at how this and this works. Let me copy this and then put it on a browser and show us something very quickly before we continue. So I paste this here. It's called addition assignments. And then in this MDN documentation, there are different use cases for this. Okay, so here we have two variables declared. Using the assignment operator, we are going to see how it will work. But the syntax, this plus must come before the equal, the plus must come before the equal sign. So here we are going to declare two variables. Let's call it age, and another one we call it name to be John, and underneath this one we now say let's output, see what will happen. Use plus equal age, or let's pass in name, this concatenation I mixed it up. Okay. So what I tried doing here, it just didn't make any sense at all. It did not make any sense. Or let's just say the output should be another string. You see, it is still returning error. What exactly is the problem? It's because this is an addition assignment operator. So what it's supposed to be is to use it and add something to another thing. So if I want to say the output should be age plus 5, you see that the answer will be 15. 15 because this is going to do an addition for me. It's going to take the value of this age and then add 5 to it, and then it will give me the output, to give me the results. So if I log out the outputs, it's like our cooker is not working. No wonder. Guys, this cooker is having an issue. I don't know why. Okay, so let's understand that when you are using this one, it means you are passing this value to this value. But when you are using this particular one, it means you are adding something or a value to another one. It must not be number, it can be a string, just like we have it here. You have bar, which is 5 plus 2, that will give you 7. And let me get, I want to show us a different use case of this particular operator. You can use it to append, what is it called? You can use it to append strings or objects before the order. There is a project that I did, and I used this to do some things that are very, very serious. So if, let me repeat what I did before. If I do something like this, plus 3, you see that what is going to happen here is saying that the 10, I should add 3 to it. So if I bring out 10 here, you see that 10 is giving me 13. But if I come down and I use the subtraction operator, or which is called the decrement operator, and I subtract, you see what will happen is at this point, if I call out this age, the age will return 9. Why? Because this one is reducing while this one is adding. The same thing applicable. By the time now I call the age again and I use this one and I put something like 5, see what is going to happen. It's going to give me 45. So it simply means um, the age, let me not confuse things up here. So it's going to give me 50 because the age is 10. I'm going to multiply it into 5 and that will give me 50. So that is how you make use of this operator. And let me just use the last one there. We have age, and I use double asterisk, and I pass in 2. So when I call the age, see what is going to happen. But I want to comment this out so that the value will not high. So what is going on here? 10, and the output is going to be is going to be 100. So this one is for square root. This is modulus, division, multiplication, subtraction, addition, and passing of value to a variable. It's as simple as that. So whenever you are using them, you consider the use case before you can use them. That is for assignment operators. Comparison operators, on the other hand, use it to compare values, use it to compare two things. And I will only emphasize on the first three, maybe because we have been using this greater than, less than, and we know what that is. So I would I would just still use a variable, and I'll call this should be 20,
while
while
num2
num2
should
should
be
be 40.
40.
40. Okay, let me still give it 20.
So
So
I'll now
I'll
log,
now log,
I want to
I want to
log
log out
num1
num1
is
is
equal to
equal to num2. It is returning true.
so if
So
I
if I
log
log
out
out
using the
using the
equality,
strict equality, it will still give me true.
let me
But
convert this
let
to
me convert this thing to a
see what
string.
happens.
See what
This
happened.
is no longer
This is no longer a number, it's now a
this is
string.
now
This is now
a number.
a number.
Why this is
While this is
returning
returning true,
the
the
strict
strict
equality
equality or strict
comparison
comparison is returning false.
because
Why?
this
Because
one
this one
already know
already
that
know that, okay,
this is
this
20,
is
this is
20, this
20,
is
but they are
20,
not
but they
of
are not
the
of
same
the
data
same
type
data type
anymore.
anymore.
So
So
this one will
this one will
return
return more
more
accurate
accurate
results
results
than this
because
because
there is
there
only
is only
one
one
number here.
number
So this
here.
one is
So
like
this one is
giving
like
room
giving room
for
for
trial and error.
trial and error. You see, like,
Since there's one
since
number,
there's one number, maybe the other one too. Maybe you are intending to write a number, the thing now now turn to
a
a
different thing.
different thing.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
that
that
is
is
how
how
this
this
comparison
comparison
operator
operator
works.
works.
So anytime
So
you are looking
anytime you're
for a
looking for a very
strict
strict
answer, make
answer,
sure you use
make sure
this
you use this strict
comparison. But
comparison.
then
But then
the if I
the
add
if I add
this,
this,
if I
if
add
I
this,
add this,
I'm saying,
I'm
sorry,
saying, let me return this because
you're not telling me the
you are
truth.
not telling me the truth.
So what I'm
So
saying
what I'm
is,
saying, I'm asking
number
is
one
number
not
one not
equal?
equal?
Is number one
Is
not
number one
equal
not
to number
equal to
two?
number two?
And the answer that
And
I'm
the answer
getting
that
is
I'm getting is false.
false.
Why? Because
This
this
is equal.
is
Both of them
equal. The
are
both of
equal.
them are
If I
equal. But
change
if I
this to
change this to
21, you see,
21,
I'll
you see,
return
I'll return true.
it will return
It
true.
will return
So
true.
this
So this
is when you are
is when you
trying to
are
check
trying to check
non-equality.
non-equality.
When you are trying to
When you are
check
trying to check
non-equality,
non-equality,
and we also
and
have
we
the
also have the
strict
strict
version of it.
version of it,
The strict
the
version of
strict version of non-equality
is this.
is this.
So
So
for
for
non-equality,
non-equality,
if I turn
if
this to
I turn this to
string, you see this one
string,
is
you see
still
this one is still being
trying to be
fair,
fair.
trying to be fair, like
Let me not call
let me
names.
not call names.
This one
But this
is not
one
looking
is not
anybody's
looking
face.
anybody's
It's
face.
telling you that
It's
okay,
telling you
these
that, okay,
two
these two
values they are not
values, they are not
the
equal. They are
same.
not the
Not
same.
this time around, it's
Not
not
this
the
time
same.
around, it's not the
It's
same,
saying they are
but
not
it's saying they are not
but
equal.
this one is
But
trying
this
to
one is trying to
consider if they
consider
are
if they are
equal. So
equal
you
or not. So
watch out, be
you
careful
watch out, you be
how you
careful
use them
how you
to
use them to
avoid
avoid
issues when you're working
issues when you're
with
working with
JavaScript.
JavaScript.
These
We
ones
know
are
these ones are greater than, less than,
greater than,
greater than, equal
less
to,
than,
and less than and equal to.
so
So
this is
this
for
is for what is it called?
the
The
comparison
comparison
operators.
operators.
Now
Now,
logical
logical operators,
we have
we have
and we
and
have
we have
or,
or,
and then
and then the
the
third
one I
one,
said
which I said,
I'll get the
I'll
name,
get the name. The name used to skip my head,
but
but
I don't know why.
I don't know why.
So this
So
one we are
this
going
one we
to
are going to
do something
do
like
something like
username
username
should
should
equal
equal
to
to
golden,
golden,
and
and
the
the
password
password
should
should
equal
equal
to
to
1 2 3
1, 2,
4.
3, 4.
Okay,
Okay,
so let's have
so let's
something
have
like
something
this,
like this.
and we're
And
not going
we're
to
not going to
say
say,
let's
let's
use
use
conditionals, and we
conditionals, and we
say
say
if
if username is equal to golden and password is equal to this. Log out, welcome back, golden, and we can see it here. So we not if you know about logic gates, you see that when you're using the and logical operator, it means that the both side has to be true. So the two condition has to be true. The first condition should be true, and the second should also be true. If one path is not true, then it will return false. So the two side has to be true before this AND operator will return true. But if one side is false, one side is true, then the both side, the output is going to be false. Now, if we go to OR by putting this young man, now yes, when you're using the OR logical operator, the both side, if it's they both are true, then no problem, it will return true. If I change this, it is still returning true. Why? Because OR is evaluating either one of the condition. If this is true or this is true. So it will only return false when both sides are not true. Then it will return false. If both sides are true, it will return true. One side is true, it will return true. Both sides are false, then it will return false. Now, I'm not going to, where there are a lot of things where we can do with these logical operators, but it will be for another day where we look at the use cases because they are very, 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 very important. To be honest, very, very important. Now, um, let's now look at the third option, which is, just give me a second, please. This person, your call is distracting me. I will not hear what. All right. So let us put this young man in between. Though I'm not going to explain more about it until what is it called? We talk about tenaries. Yes, let me leave this one to tenaries. Let's leave this because explaining this now will take us out of the context of what we are discussing. So we can use this to evaluate. We can use the AND. What is it again? We can use the and OR to evaluate if certain conditions are met or certain conditions are not met. We know that if we are logging into Facebook or you are creating an application where people need to authenticate their credentials, you will not use OR because if the username is correct and the password is not correct, the person will log in. But if you use AND, then it will evaluate whether the username and password is exactly what it is stored in the database. So I think that's just it for this one. Now talking about the ternary operator, I will introduce this so that when we start talking about ternaries, we'll look into it in a more detail. So ternary operator has three parts. The first part is the condition. Now the second part is value when the condition is true, while the third part is value when the condition is false. So in React, you use ternaries in place of if-else statements very, very much. Let's say For example, we have well, let me declare another variable here. So let's declare a variable just like this, and then we use these ternaries, and then we say the variable is logged in with a boolean value. So what we are saying here is we are checking using these ternaries if the person is logged in, return welcome back. If the person is not logged in, return login again. So let us log in this message and see what happened. He said, please log in. Why? Because the value of the variable is false. So if we change this to true, you see, welcome back. So this reaction or this operation we are seeing here can also be done using this if else statement. But when you go into React, then you see that it is more of ternaries because you can render some content based on some conditions using this ternary operator, which will be more better than trying to render the content using if else statement. All right. If else statement is a block scoped operation, but this ternary is not like that. All right. So, like I said, if you take note of the component of this ternary condition, value when it is true and value when it is false. So after the condition, you put in this question mark, and after the first value, you use this colon to separate them. That's all. So we'll look more into this when we get to the ternary section in our roadmap. But then, if you watch, I think one of the videos that of the live section that we did, here we use the type of operator to check. So if I declare a variable and I use guys, don't be offended for the dog. The dog is just making noise. So if I use the type of operator here, I'll use it to check the type of value that is stored inside this variable. And now it is returning. Oh, um, our IDE is yelling at me because I've declared it before. So it's returning boolean. Why? Because the type of data stored inside this variable is a boolean type of data. So if I change this to 30, you see that to change, it's supposed to change because this is no longer, hold on, just give me a moment. So I don't know why this one, my system is just messing up. So this is now of data type number. If I now put quotation around this, it will change to string. Okay. If I put something like null, to change to null. All right. So that is just basically what this is used for. If you want to know the type of data that is stored in a particular variable, use this operator followed by the variable name to return the type of data there for you. So that is what the type of operator is used for. Okay. Um,
let
Let
me
me
take a
take a
pause
pause
at
at
this
this
point
point
to
to
see
see
if
if
there
there
is
is
any
any
reaction
reaction
to
to
what
what
we
we
have
have
been
been
talking
talking
about
about
since.
since.
Do I have
Do
any
I have any
question?
question? The operator can only be used
On an
on an
existing
existing
variable.
variable.
It can
It
be
can be
used
used
on
on
output. Taiwo, I don't seem to understand what you're typing here.
Taiwo, I don't seem to understand what you're typing here. Okay.
So guys, do I have any question?
So guys, do I have any question?
No question for now.
So
So
we are all
we
good
are
to
all
go,
good
right?
to go,
So let
right?
me
So
get a
let me
thumbs
get a
up if
thumbs up if
we
we
are
are following
the
the
flow.
flow.
How many are we
How
in the
many are we
call
in the
even?
call even? I think we are only 1, 2, 3, 4.
One, two,
One,
three.
two, three.
Okay,
Okay,
I think
I
that
think
is
that
that
is that
on
on
operators,
operators,
and
and
we'll close
we'll
this
close this
chapter.
chapter.
The next
The
thing
next
now
thing
is
now
the
is the
control
control
structures.
structures.
The
The
control
control
structures.
structures.
We
We
have
have
variables and
variables and
data
data
types,
types, operators, control structures.
that's the
That's the
next
next
thing
thing
that we need
that
to
we need
look
to
at.
look at.
And
And
then
then
in this
in these control
control
structures, we are not going to exhaust it today. So we'll call this
control structures,
structure.
I'm on emergency again.
who is
Who is
disturbing me?
disturbing me?
All right,
All right.
so
So
control
control
structures.
structures.
This has
This
to
has to
do
do
with
with
using
using
conditionals like
conditionals like
if
if
else,
else,
if
if
else,
else statement,
using
using
switch, all
switch,
right,
all right,
using
using
loops,
loops,
different types
different
of
types of
loops that
loops
we've
that
been
we've been
discussing,
discussing,
for
for
loop,
loop,
while
while
loop,
loop,
do
do
while
while
loop,
loop,
for
for
off loop,
off loop,
for
for
in loop,
in loop,
and so
and
on and
so on
so
and so
forth.
forth.
So what we're
So
going to
what we're
do
going to do
now
now
is to
is to
just
just
look at
look at
a very
a very
few
few
as the
as
time
the
will
time will
permit,
permit,
and then
and
we'll
then
call
we'll
it
call
a
it a
day.
day.
So
So
first of all,
first of
let's
all, let's
understand that
understand that
this
this control
control
structure,
structure, um,
um,
control
control
structures
structures
simply
simply
determine the
determine the
flow
flow
of
of
our
our
code
code
execution
execution
or
or
program
program
execution
execution
based
based
on
on
certain
certain
conditions
conditions
or
or
repetitions as the
repetitions as the
case may
case
be.
may be.
So
So
let us
let
start
us
with
start with
the
the
conditional
conditional
statements.
statements.
Okay,
Okay,
because for you
because for
to
you to
control the
control the
flow
flow
of your
of your
program,
program,
the
the
program,
program,
then you
then
can
you
use
can use
conditional
conditional
statements.
statement.
When
And
we
when
talk
we talk
about
about
conditional
conditional
statements,
statement, we are talking about
if
if,
we are talking
we are
about
talking about else if,
we're talking
we are
about
talking about
else.
else.
Now the
Now the
question
question
is,
is,
um,
um,
we need to
we need
really
to really
know,
know,
and which is
and
where we
which
are
is
going to
where we
draw
are
the
going to draw
curtain
the curtain
today,
today,
when to
when
use
to
if
use if
statement and when to
statement and
use
when to
switch.
use switch.
Yes.
Yes, because all of them can be chained.
So
So
we call
we
something
call
like
something like
score
score and
and
we
we
pass
pass
the score
to
to
92%. I don't
92%.
like
I don't like
lower
lower
scores.
scores.
So
So
pass it to
pass it to
92%.
92%.
Now let's
Now
use
let's use
conditionals
conditionals
to
to
do
do some things.
So
So if
our
our
score,
score,
first of
first of
all,
all,
is
is
how do I put
how do
it?
I put it?
If our
If our
score
score,
with
which
let me make
let me
this
make this thing to look more nice.
going
Going
to
to
call
call
this
this
student
student's name
John Doe.
John Doe. No, no, no. I'm not gonna use you today.
I'll
I'll
call
call the okay.
let's call
Let's call him Ahmed. We have Ahmed in the class.
okay.
Okay.
So the
So
student
the
name is
student name is gonna be Ahmed.
Ahmed
Ahmed,
while his
while
score is
his score is
92.
92.
So we use
So we use
conditionals now
conditionals now
to
to
see
see
how to
how
grade
to grade
this
these
student.
students.
All right.
All right.
We say
We
if
say if
the
the
score
score
is
is
greater
greater
than,
than,
I hope this
I
is
hope this
greater
is
than
greater than or
or equal to
equal to
90,
90,
what should
what
happen
should
is
happen
we should
is we
log
should
out
log out,
um,
um,
we should log
we should
out
log out
Ahmed
Ahmed
has
has
A,
A,
but I'll
but
change
I'll
this.
change this.
Let me put
Let me put
colon here
colon here
and I'll just
and I'll
use
just use grade.
so
So
then let me
then
turn
let me turn
our cooker
our
on
cooker on
so that we'll see
so
the
that we'll see the
output.
output.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
the if
the if
statement will
statement will
evaluate
evaluate
if
if
our score
our score
variable
variable
is
is
greater than or
greater
equal
than or
to
equal to
this
this
90,
90.
then it will
Then
bring
it will
out
bring out
the
the
student name.
student's
You
name.
remember
You
this
remember
is
this is
template
template
literals,
literals,
but we'll talk
but we'll
about
talk
that
about
again
that
later.
again later.
So it will
So
bring
it will
out the
bring out the
student's name
student's name and
and
then add
grade
grade
is A.
is A.
But if
But
I
if
give
I
this
give
to
this to,
if I put
if I
this
put
to
this to
85,
85,
what is
what
going to
is
happen?
going to happen?
Nothing would
Nothing
happen.
would happen.
Why?
Why?
Because this
Because this
condition
condition
evaluated to
evaluated to
false.
false.
Okay?
Okay?
This
This
condition
condition
evaluated to
evaluated to
false.
false.
And we have not
And we have
set
not
any
set
other
any other
condition
condition
of what
of
will
what
happen
will
if the
happen if the
condition is not
condition is
true.
not
So
true.
this
So
line,
this
this
line,
block
this
of
block
code
of code
here
here
can
can
only
only
be
be
executed
executed when
when the
this
condition
condition
evaluates
evaluates
to
to true.
true. Okay?
Okay?
When that
When
is
that
the
is the
case, it will
case, it will
now
now
make us
make
to
us
do
to do
one of
one
these
of
two
these two
things. Is
things.
either
Is
we
either we
chain
chain
this
this
conditional
conditional
statement
statement
with
with
else if,
else
or
if,
we
or
just
we just
end
end
the flow
the flow
with
with
else.
else.
So let
So
us
let
end it
us end
first.
it
So we
first.
can
So we
say
can say
else
else
in the
in
else
the else
block
block,
we also
we also
decide
decide
what we want
what we
to
want to
have
have
as our
as our
output.
output.
So
So
we can
we can
we can
we
decide
can
to
decide
say
to say
the
the
student
student
scored
scored
got a
got
grade
a
of
grade
B.
of B.
So if
So
the
if the
score
score
is
is
less
less
than
than
and not
and not
equal to
equal to
90,
90,
our
our
student should be
students should be
graded
graded
with B.
with
But
B.
if the
But if the
score
score
is
is
90 and
90
above,
and above,
then
then
the student
the
should have
student should
an
have
A.
an A.
All right.
All right?
So
So,
like this,
like
the
this,
flow
the
of
flow
this
of this
program is very
program is
simple.
very simple.
Once it gets to
Once
this
it gets to
else,
this else,
it is over.
it is over.
That's the end of the
That's the end
program.
of the program.
So when
So
this
when this
evaluates to true,
evaluates to
this will
true,
come out.
this will come out.
When this
When this
evaluates to
evaluates to
false, this will
false,
come
this
out.
will come out, and that's all.
If we want
If we
to
want to
chain
chain
the
the
if
if
statement,
statement,
we can
we
say
can say
else if,
else if,
hmm,
hmm,
this one is
this one
80,
is 80.
else if
Else if
the
the
score, we set
score,
a
we
new
set a new
conditional here.
conditional here.
Else if we are
Else
going to
if we are going to
say
say
if the
if the
score is
score
greater
is
than
greater
or equal
than
to
or equal
80,
to 80,
the student should
the
have
student should have
B.
B.
Once
Once
again, we can
again,
come
we
over
can come
here
over here
and say
and say
else
else
if
if
again,
again,
all right,
all right,
else if
else if again
the score
the
is
score
greater
is
than or equal
greater
to
than or equal to
70, the
70,
student
the
should have
student should have
grade of C.
grade of C.
So we can
So we
continue
can
to chain
continue
and
to
to
chain
chain,
and to chain and to chain,
but
but
it becomes
it becomes
redundant
redundant
when the chaining
when the
becomes
chaining
too much.
becomes too much.
All right,
All right,
and
and
at the end,
at
let
the
us
end, let
close
us close this one again
before I
before
continue
I
with the
continue with the
explanation.
explanation.
Else
Else,
at
at
this
this
point,
point,
we'll tell
we'll
the
now tell
students,
the students,
will I say
will
you
I
did not
say
write
you
this
did not write
exam?
this exam?
No, we don't
No,
want
we don't want
to say
to say
it
it
seems
seems you
did not
did
not pass
not pass,
because I don't like
because I
failure.
don't like failure.
You did not
You did not
participate
participate
in the exam.
in the exam.
So when the
So
grade
when
is
the
not
grade is not
70, is not
70,
80,
is
is not
not 80,
90,
is not 90,
let's say the
let's
student
say
did
the
not write
student
the
did not
exam.
write the exam at all at all.
All right.
All right.
Let us now
Let us now
cross-examine
cross-examine this the control flow or the control structure.
here we have
Here we have
a score
a score
and we have a
and we
student's
have a
name.
student's name.
We now want
We
to
now want to
compute the
compute the
child's
child's score
or the child's
or the
report
child's report
card.
card.
We are
We
using
are use
if-else
if
statement.
else
We said
statement. We
if
said
the child's
if the
score
child's
is greater
score
than
is
or
greater
equal to
than or equal to
90,
90,
the child to
the
be
child to
given
be given
grade A.
grade A.
Else,
Else,
if the
if the
person
person
has
has
greater than
greater
80
than
or
80 or
80,
80,
the person
the
should be
person
given
should be
B.
given B.
Else, if
Else,
the child
if the
has
child has
70 or
70
above,
or above,
he should be
he should be
given
given um,
C. I think I'm
C. I
making a
think I'm
mistake
making a
here.
mistake here in this explanation.
All right.
All right.
It should
It
be
should be
70 or
70 or
below.
below.
People should be
People should
helping
be
me
helping me because as far as these two
symbols are
symbols are
concerned,
concerned,
I am
I
going
am
to
going to
continue to mix
continue
them
to
up.
mix them up.
Is
Is
this
this
greater than
greater
or
than
less
or
than?
less than, greater than or less than, greater than or less than?
I mean,
I mean,
nobody is saying
nobody is
anything.
saying anything. Let me go and let me
Walk
work
out my
out my
salvation
salvation with fear
and
and
trembling.
trembling.
So right,
So
right over
right
here,
over here,
I'm going to
I'm
say
going to say
console
console
dot
dot
long
long
3
3
is
is
2
2
2
2 3, and I put this and I press true.
oh
Oh,
2 is
2 is, oh,
less
this is
than.
less than.
Good,
Good,
good, good.
good, 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 good.
So this is
So
less
this is
than
less
and this
than
is
and
greater
this
than.
is greater than. So
So
it
it's
should
greater
be
than or
greater
equal
than
to.
or equal to.
All right,
All right,
I've sorted out
I've sorted
myself.
out myself.
So
So
please, if you are
please, if
hearing
you're
me, give me
hearing
a
me, give
thumbs
me
up.
a thumbs up. Let me be sure that we are hearing because
I wouldn't
I
like to
wouldn't
be
like to
talking
be
to
talking to
myself.
myself.
Are we
Are we
hearing?
hearing?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Boniface, I will get
Boniface, I
back
will
to you
get
in a
back to you.
second.
Just hold on a second.
Now,
Now,
when
when
this, when
this
the
when the
chaining becomes
chaining
too
becomes
much,
too much,
it then
it
becomes
then becomes
advisable that you
advisable that you
use
use
switch.
switch.
So
So
I have
I have
listened. The
listened. The
professor
professor
said
said
that
that
when
when
your
your
nested if
nested if
statement
statement
is more
is
than
more
five,
than 5,
it's better
it's
you
better you
switch to.
switch to you
Making
start
use of
making use of
switch
switch
instead of
instead of
if
if
statement.
statement.
All right,
All right,
and
and
I think
I
that is
think that
true
is true
because it
because
will
it
be
will be
more
more
readable,
readable,
better to
better to
understand
understand
when you are
when you are
using
using
switch
switch to nest multiple conditions than when you are using else if statement. So quickly, let us now consider how switch works. Now, when you are making use of switch, first of all, you have to consider the what is it called? You have to consider the syntax. You start with the keyword switch, just like switch simply means what it is. Switch means switch. So here we are switching over what? We are switching over the score. And what do we need to do here? I'm going to write this out so that it will be clear to everybody. So what we need to do here, when you are using switch, then create different cases. So first of all, we're going to have our first case. The first case is our score should be 90. Let me just accept them. Then we'll explain. So this first case, we pass it to 90 and we log out this to have grade A. So which means if the child has 90, it should be A, and there's a break here. If it's 80, it should be B. If it's 70, it should be D, and there is default that should return it seems you did not participate in the exam. Now let us look at what we have inside our variable. The variable is 85, and what is being logged out here is it seems you did not participate in the exam. Why? Because here we do not have any variable that falls, we do not have any case that falls within this 85. So if I change this 85 to 90, if I change it to 90, then we should have made grade A. Okay, so if we do not have this break, what happens here is when the code is running and a particular case is considered, if this evaluates to true, it should stop. Once it hits this break, it should jump out of the switch. So once it hits that break, the next thing is to come and check for the subsequent code blocks. So it will just skip all other cases in that particular switch. But if we do not have break, it means that the flow will continue to consider this. It will consider this and this and this and so on and so forth. It will create disorderliness in our program flow. All right. So for that reason, we have to include this break right here. And why do we have defaults? Default here is our else statement. Remember in the if else statement we used else here, which means if none of the conditions here evaluates to true, then there should be a fallback code, which is the else block. In switch, if you do not have default case, it simply means that when the conditions does not evaluate to true, when the conditions do not evaluate to true, then it will not, you won't know. It will just jump out of this and then come to the next line of code. Let me comment this out and then we'll see what will happen. Let me get rid of this young man here. Okay, and I'm going to expand this so that we use it to check the output instead. So I'll come up here to the variable. in the variable, remember we have 90, 80, 70. So here I'm going to put 60. So I put 60, nothing happens. So nothing happens. There is no output. Why? Because there is no else block. There is no default block. But if I uncomment this gentleman that is here, the default, what will happen is they will have something to fall back on. So I think that is the simplest way that I can explain this switch, uh, this switch condition flow. But then you have to make research on your own to make sure that you understand it better. Okay, in this class, we'll not have time to say everything that relates to a particular concept. But once you have the basic foundation, then you can build your skyscraper on this foundation we have laid. Okay, so now right after here, we have considered the if else statements right up here, and we have considered the switch. And I said, when you have more than 5 nested if statements, it's better you switch to you make use of switch. Let me not come and confuse us. It's better you switch to switch, than nesting your else if to be too long. It will create confusion and probably unavoidable mistake. All right. In the next class, we'll now try to look at other conditional, other, what do I call it? Other control structures, which has to do with the loops. Okay, look at the all the types of loops in our next class, and look at also the real world cases where those control structures are being used. For now, if you learned anything, I want to see you. If you did not learn anything, I still want to see you saying you did not learn anything. If you have any question, go ahead and ask your question.